right, welcome to group project number 3, presented by group 4. My name is Bill Purdom. I'll be doing the introduction. John McCall will follow me with question number 1, and Josh Cantwell will be doing question number 2. Our presentation is on a problem presented to us about Westco Incorporated. They're wanting to do a bid for a nursery called Zwinger, and it is a special order. Our given information was Westco Incorporated its only product is a combination fertilizer weed killer called Grow-N Weed. Grow-N Weed is sold nationwide to retail nurseries and garden stores. Zwinger Nursery plans to sell a similar fertilizer weed killer compound through a regional nursery chain under its own private label. Zwinger does not have a manufacturing facility of its own, so it has asked Westco and several other companies to submit a bid for manufacturing and delivering 60,000-pound order of a private brand compound to Zwinger. While the chemical composition of the Zwinger compound differs from that of Grow-N Weed, the manufacturing process is the same or very similar. The Zwinger compound would be produced in 1,000-pound lots. Each lot would require 20 direct labor hours and the following chemicals. The chemicals consist of AG5 at a quantity in pounds of 300, KL2 in 200 pounds, CW7 150 pounds, and DF6 175 pounds. The first 3 chemicals, AG5, KL2, and CW7, are all used in the production of the Grow-N Weed. DF6 was used in another compound that Westco discontinued several months ago. The supply of DF6 that Westco had on hand when the other compound was discontinued was not discarded. Westco could sell the supply of DF6 at a prevailing market price less the 10 cents per pound selling and handling fee. Westco also has on hand a chemical called BH3, which was manufactured for use in another product that is no longer produced. BH3, which cannot be used in Grow-N Weed, can be substituted for the AG5 on a one-for-one basis without affecting the quantity of the Zwinger compound. The BH3 in inventory has a salvage value of $1,000. The inventory and cost data for the chemicals that can be used to produce the Zwinger compound are shown below. So we have the there's AG5, there's 24,000 pounds. When they purchased it, it was at $1.15. The current market price per pound is $1.20. And KL2, they need 12,000. They have 12,000 pounds in inventory. They have an actual price when they purchased $1.10, and the market price is at $1.05. CW7, 13,000 pounds on hand, $1.35 when they bought it. The market price is $1.40. The DF6 compound, as discussed earlier, is discontinued. 6,600 pounds in inventory at an 80 cents when they bought it and 80 cents per market price. The BH3 is 7,500 pounds on hand, 90 cents when they bought it, and it has a salvage value to them. The current direct labor wage rate is $54 per hour. The predetermined overhead rate is based on direct labor hours. The predetermined overhead rate for the current year based on the 2-shift capacity with no overtime is as follows. The variable manufacturing overhead is $3 per direct labor hour. Fixed manufacturing overhead is $10.50 per direct labor hour for a combination predetermined overhead rate of $13.50 per direct labor hour. Westco's production manager reported that the present equipment and facilities are adequate to manufacture the Zwinger compound. Therefore, the order would have no effect on the total fixed manufacturing overhead cost. However, Westco is within the 400 hours of its 2-shift capacity this month. Any additional hours beyond the 400 hours must be done in overtime if need be. The Zwinger compound could be produced on regular time by shifting a portion of Grow-N Weed production to overtime. Westco's direct labor wage rate for overtime is $81 per hour. There is no allowance for any overtime premium in the predetermined overhead rate. Okay, I wanted to point out that this is a relevant cost problem with handling, and it's being handled like a special order. So there will not be any fixed overhead that will be applied to this. The relevant parts to the problem are the 60,000 pounds, the 1,000 pounds it takes to make up a lot. There'll be 60 batches total that will be delivered. It takes 20 direct labor hours per lot. The direct labor rate is $54. Overtime premium is $27 for a total overtime rate of $81. Some additional relevant costs and irrelevant costs in the problem. The total pounds that we need of AG5 is 18,000. We're going to need 12,000 pounds of KL2, 9,000 pounds of CW7, and DF6 will need 10,500 pounds. There is a salvage value for the BH3 if we use it. It's $1,000, but we can't. It has $1,000 value. That's if we just completely scrapped it. So in this particular problem, we're wanting to use it. It really has no bearing on what, except for an opportunity, which is what we'll use it for. So you'll see at the end of this, we won't need it. And let's see, what else? We have the market price that we paid is relevant because that's what the cost you're going to want to include into your bid. And then you'll see here that we decided that the fixed manufacturing overhead was not a relevant cost, so there is no combination. The only thing that we're going to be using is the $3 variable manufacturing overhead. All right, so with that, I will turn it over to John McCall to present the rest of problem 1. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. So we'll go ahead and start looking at this problem here, kind of digging into it. Effectively, it just asks us to calculate the lowest price that Wesco could bid for the order and still exactly cover its incremental manufacturing costs. So to find that, really, we just need to find the sum of the direct materials, the direct labor, and the wages that Wesco would have to pay its workers. So we'll go ahead and go over and take a quick look at that. We'll begin with direct materials. That's these numbers here. These are the numbers that Bill just outlined a minute ago, but there are two things I'd like to direct your attention to. First, the recipe for one batch calls, well, for all 60 batches rather, calls for 18,000 pounds of AG5, but as you'll remember, we can substitute BH3 for AG5 pound for pound. So when you subtract the 18,000, or excuse me, when you track the 7,500 from the 18,000, that gives us 10,500. So here are our pounds required. Here's the cost per pound for each chemical. And then as you can see in my formula bar up here, simply multiply those together. That gets the total cost for each chemical. And the sum of all of those gives us a total direct materials cost of $52,950. So now we have to move on to direct labor. And you'll recall from earlier we have 1,200 hours of direct labor. That's 20 hours per batch times 60 batches. And as Bill said, we only go with the variable overhead rate of $3 per hour. So once again, I'll let you see the math I did there. You multiply your overhead rate by the number of hours required. That gives you $3,600 in direct labor expenses. And then finally, we have to take a look at our wages. And keep in mind, this project will take 1,200 hours, and only 400 hours are available before the company has to start paying its overtime rate. So the 400 hours at the conventional rate of $54 an hour, that gives us a wage expense of $21,600. And then after overtime, we have 800 hours left at a rate of $81 per hour. Multiply those two together, we have $64,800. When added together, that gives us a total wage expense of $86,400. So when you add all three of those together, you get a total relevant cost of $142,950. which gives us the total amount of incremental manufacturing costs and therefore the lowest that Wesco could bid for this job and still exactly cover them. So that is going to be the solution to problem 1, and Josh is going to take us home with a look at problem 2. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So I'm going to go ahead and take us through the second portion of the problem. It states, refer to the original data, assume that Zwinger Nursery plans to place regular orders for 60,000 pound lots of the new compound. Wesco expects the demand for growing weed to remain strong. Therefore, the recurring orders from Zwinger would put Wesco over its 2-shift capacity. However, production could be scheduled so that 90% of each Zwinger order could be completed during the regular hours. As another option, some growing weed production could be shifted temporarily to overtime so that the Zwinger order could be produced on regular time. Current market prices are the best value estimates of future market prices. Wesco's standard markup policy for new products is 50% of the full manufacturing cost, including fixed manufacturing overhead. Calculate the price that Wesco Inc. would quote Zwinger Nursery for each 60,000 pound of new compound, assuming that it is to be treated as a new product and this pricing policy is followed. So, in order for us to begin that calculation, we're going to use some of the numbers from the previous portion of the problem. The first thing we need to do is get the total direct materials that's going to be used for each order. So we'll get that by calculating the total amount of each compound that needs to be, the total amount of each chemical that needs to be used in each order to get a cost per order for each material. And then after we have that, we are going to just add those together. That gives us the total direct materials needed. Then we need to talk about direct labor for this. What we were told in the scenario is that 90% of the production will be able to be completed utilizing the ordinary direct wage rate, and that 10% of the production will need to be overtime. So if we're able to take those two rates and we know the 1,200 hours is exactly how much that it takes to complete one order, then we can calculate our non-overtime amount as it shows up here at 90% of the total hours needed at the $54 an hour. And then the same thing with the 10% of the overtime for that 1,200 hours at the rate of $81 per hour, which gives us a total direct labor cost of the $68,040. Then we need to calculate the total manufacturing overhead. One of the differences when we're looking at this ongoing order as opposed to a special order is that earlier we took the fixed portion out of the predetermined overhead rate, and in this case we'll leave that in there. So instead of like we did before, we just used the variable manufacturing overhead rate of $3 per hour. We're going to use the entire combined predetermined overhead rate of $13.50 for this calculation, which gives us our grand total manufacturing overhead for each order at $16,200. So our total manufacturing cost is $149,940, and then we need to use a cost plus approach to determine the quote that we're going to give them per order. And so we simply take that total manufacturing cost, multiply it by 1.5 times, which gives us the 50% markup and a total of $224,910. We hope you enjoyed our presentation. Thank you very much.